Welcome back. Here's where you left off.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Conversation Corner. Today, we're going to be touching the topic called How Much Does Culture Affect Our Perception? Oh my God. Perception of a book. I am not starting that again. So this question actually came up several times throughout our book reads, because some of the books that we've been reviewing has the ability of art imitating life type feel to it. And the way we interpret books sometimes reminds you of exactly what's happening in the real world, as in 2024, right? And so it's kind of interesting because there's several books that we've read that questioned how writers actually put this together, right? And the question I have for you, Derek, I'm going to ask this a simple question: is there any books that we've read has the theme or has a section of the book that gives you pause of like, wait a minute, this feels too real?
I mean, we've read a number of books that have characters that feel real. And oftentimes we've read sci-fi books, and you and I love the sci-fi genre. But when we have, I think when it comes down to sort of moral questions as well within cultural stuff, and I'll use the example of Japanese culture. Japanese culture is in some ways very different than Western culture. And when characters in Japanese culture, you could take the same archetype in Japanese culture and it will look similar to Western culture, but it's not exactly something that we would necessarily recognize because the attitudes culturally towards their attitudes towards work, towards cleanliness, towards politeness, towards is very different than Western society. And when you get authors that write in those cultures, you get a very different feel in the book. And although we haven't read a lot of what I guess we would call foreign books from writers who are not generally from North America, we've read a couple that I think one was in England or something to that effect, but really not.
It's an English book.
Book, yeah. So, I mean, we can't really say that, but the reason I find it fascinating is because we could look at a book and say that's not culturally correct, but it's correct in a different part of the world that you haven't lived in. And that's sort of where this topic came up from is, to a Japanese person reading some of the books that we've reviewed on this channel, a vast majority of them, would they see these books as odd or as unusual? Either we'll use the example of the amount of violence in them, the concepts of morality in them, or even the way that the characters sacrifice themselves for others, or the way they arrange in social circles. And that's sort of a high-level sort of sense of where this came from. And I wanted to ask you how you look at that as a group of people, us being more westernized than some of the other cultures that we haven't really read books from.
That's actually a very good comment there, because right now we're being strictly very Western publication we've been reading. There's several books that it's definitely written by authors outside North America, and it's kind of funny that because the Ruth Weir is the one that we were talking about, the author that we were reading the book on, and the way it was written, even Harry Potter is the same way too. If you look at it that way as well too, you can read a book in the Western side or the Western civilization here. So everything from Europe to North America, South America, they're literally the Western part. If you read authors from that book, there's always a general sense that, okay, what is right, what is wrong. It's just how they looked at it is completely different. What's wrong in Canada could be fine in Europe, right? What's bad in Europe could be fine in Canada or in the US. Yeah. So for us to say, hey, the book that we're reading, I have issues with it because it's not the same values that I was grew up on, but it's okay it's okay in their world, in their country, so it's fine there. So the question is, would you, as a reader, would you expect to have, would you, okay, the best way to ask this question is, are you reading the books based on your sense of morality or a sense of telling a story?
I don't necessarily. I think we all read books for something that we personally find interesting from a context of the content of the book. However, let's give another example. Let's take England and talk about Brexit. And that was just, I mean, that consumed the society there for years as they went through the process of Brexit. People were affected by it. It's been mentioned and so forth because of the economic strain or whatever. To us, you and I over here, I mean, we understand it, but it didn't really impact us. So if it's mentioned in a book, we don't get the same sense of the impact of it as would somebody from England. Having said that, also, somebody from England wouldn't necessarily understand the close-knit relationship that communities have on the 49th parallel, where people from the States and Canada just basically mix. And literally going down a street, you can cross the street and you're in the US. I mean, there's just some interesting, to them, they're an island country. They just don't have that experience. So if you don't have the experience in that culture and that environment, are you losing something, or are you not able to appreciate the work of art as thoroughly, culturally speaking?
Well, here's another example, based on your example you provided. If you're made in Europe, this means you can travel anywhere without a passport. You just walk in there. You can walk from France, you can go to Spain, you can go to Portugal, you can go to Germany. You can go everywhere with no issues, with zero passport issues. Here, if you look at the perspective of Canada versus the US, if you need to go to the US, you need to show a passport. If you're an American going to Canada, you need to show a passport. For us, this is normal. This is completely normal. If you travel to the US, we have to bring a passport, right? And in Europe, you just walk. You just go across with no issues, no problems there. If you look at, this is pre-Brexit. Post-Brexit is another story, but we're looking at pre-Brexit, we're just mainland Europe. But if you're a writer or a reader and say, hey, I need to go to US, I need to go to Canada, I have to bring my passport. Then if you're in Europe, you'll be like, why? Right?
Well, actually, it's a good point you make, because if you're discussing it and you're like, he just went from Austria to France or whatever, and as a reader, you're like, okay, where's the customs check, or where's the...
Exactly.
You're kind of asking yourself that question.
So that's one of the biggest things too, that the difference between how you interpreted the book itself based on what you're reading, right? So similar to laws as well too.
Right.
If you go to if you're reading a book that's primarily in the U.S. or this is an example in the U.S. You do things there that it's illegal in the U.S. Like they say, for example, what's the best example that everyone actually has? Drink and drive. Let's say drink and drive. Drink and drive. You're not supposed to do that, right? There's a certain amount. You can have a beer, but you can't go past a certain amount of points, right? Or whatever. In Europe, it's completely different. You can drink a little bit more because, again, the tolerance is different. The culture is different there. Here's another good example. In France, kids as young as 12 years old are permitted to drink in a controlled environment. In North America, that's a no-no. But in France, it's normal. You know what I mean? But here it's not. So if you're reading a book and it's set in France and a 12-year-old child is drinking a small glass of wine, I guarantee everyone's going to be, oh my gosh, you can't do that. This is legal. This is immorality, blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, it's not. It's fine there.
The drinking actually a really good point. That's a great comparison.
Yeah, exactly. So it's completely different things, right? So
I find it interesting, and I mean, but here's the other interesting. Would we find that morally, culturally questionable, we judge the other culture and say, oh, they're terrible. They're giving 12-year-olds wine or something like that, and how that would affect your review of a book because you're using your own morality system to judge the book, right? To judge that culture, right?
That's actually a good question too, because as this is our thing, is to review books, right? If we review books, we review the books based on the content itself. Because for me personally, if the writer and the setting is based on another country, when I review the book, or when I read the book and review the book, am I judging it based on my sense of morality or culture or not?
I think we all do that.
We all
naturally.
do.
Yeah.
I agree.
It's hard to take yourself out of that, when you're looking at it.
But you have to be realistic as well too, that this is not your culture. This is not what you grew up on. So you're reading a book from another country and you expect to have the same morality as you, then that's the problem, because you're not opening your eyes to say this is not.
Let's take a really harsh topic here. Let's take about spanking. Okay, let's take some go to another culture and say that in the book there's spanking in the book, spanking children or whatever, and in Western culture that's very frowned upon now and so forth, and doing that. And if you're reading through the book and your morality says that's wrong, but the book is a great book, it has a great plot, whatever that might be, great characters, whatever that might be, and your criticism of it is the spanking, and then somebody says to you, well, in wherever country it is, that's completely acceptable. How do you reconcile that in your judgment or your review of the book then? I think that the cultural impact of that is where we are looking at having our emotions impact.
Yeah, that's another good question then. That's a good question, actually. The question I have to ask is, if the book is good, if I'm reading it and I know it comes from another country or another culture, as a reader, I have to remind myself. Here's a better question. An educated reader should automatically understand that this book was not written where I live. Okay.
Well, that's actually.
I know.
You can be educated and have a very strong sense of morality.
Yeah, but at the end of the day,
intelligence does not exclude.
I agree.
Criticism.
I agree, but at the same time too, right? That if you know the book is from another country, and the example is spanking is allowed there compared to where you live, who gives you the right to tell people this is not a good book or I have an issue with this book?
It's a very interesting question, because maybe we even within our own culture, some people write books about topics that we might find offensive, that we may even find, like, just say somebody writes a book about the Nazis, and they're like, hey, they were the greatest guys ever. You would find that very offensive, I assume, and the problem is that the person is entitled to their opinion. Whether it is culturally acceptable or not is a question. The question becomes, when you review that, of course you look at it from the lens of your own morality.
Well, you actually made a good point then. It's like, freedom of speech in different countries is different.
It's a good point too. Yeah, I did not go. Right? I did not go there yet.
Yeah, I'm going there now. Freedom of speech, because we're in Canada, our freedom of speech is completely different from the U.S., the EU, to Australia, to China, to whatever. Where it's completely different.
I wouldn't
definition.
say completely, but I get your point.
Yeah, it's completely different. It's different. Trust me, I checked. It's different, way different from even our neighbors in the South. So, for a writer, it's just a writer. If you say whatever amount that you say that you normally can say in your own country, but as soon as the book that got released to another country with different definition of freedom of speech and the way you write it, am I breaking their laws or am I breaking my law?
No, we're talking about a fictional book.
I know.
It's not about.
I'm saying here, Derek. I'm just
you're
saying
getting
here
into
that,
what is it? What's the word? Like having books banned for various political topics.
It's literally that's what it is, though. If
that's happening in other countries, we won't go into detail.
It's exactly the same thing what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
Is the book culturally represents or other culture represented the book itself? Again, the same thing. If you wrote a book regarding whatever, but another country is like, oh, you can't say that there because it's frowned upon and you're not allowed to do that. Okay, it's the same thing we're talking about right now, because remember, it's our culture being published, but in our culture say, no, this is not right. So who's right in this one?
So I think the question becomes is, what about that other culture are you as the reader going to value? Do you value the other culture because something's brought you to that book? Maybe it's a character, maybe it's a storyline, maybe it's a group of people, maybe it's a concept. Something about that brought you to that book. Maybe it might even be prejudice, even prejudice. Maybe you're like, hey, I don't believe in this thing, and I'm going to read the other side so that I can, argue the other side or see the other side's perspective. Maybe that's it. But something's brought you to that book. And the question is, what brought you to that book in the first place? Was it interest or was it criticism? Like, what part of it's brought to you?
Yeah, no, you made a good point. You made a very, very good point here. It's like saying, okay, I found this book, amazing book, but I know it's very controversial. Okay, am I going to read it because it's controversial, or am I reading because I'm curious? So you already made a point. You already made a point to yourself. This book, I know this is very controversial, but I'm going to read it anyway. You made that choice. Okay. After reading it, it's like, well, I disagree every single one of them. It's like, fine, you disagree on everything, right? But at the end of the day, you as a reader, very self-conscious about reading this book because you want to know what's happening with this book. Why is this considered controversial? You made that choice. Yeah. So morality, if you look at it as morality or whatever you want to call it, you made that decision. Doesn't matter if you agree or disagree with it. You made that decision to read it. You made a conscious decision to say, I want to form my own opinion about this book. Granted, you already after reading the book, you said, okay, I don't like this book because X, Y, Z. Fine, right? Because you are judging this based on your set of values. So this is why it's very, very important as a reader to open your mind and just get rid of your whatever moralities or whatever you want to use. Just accept the book for what it is, then make a judgment based on that. But do not say, I don't like this book because you spit in the ground because you're not supposed to. If that's your argument, I'm sorry. That is the weakest.
I think generally speaking that you and I, when we've read a book and the plot doesn't go in the direction we want or expect it, we've expressed that issue. But I don't think we've ever expressed an issue of a cultural matter to us because we try to be open-minded about those things. And I wonder if people that read the book and their focus is on the cultural aspect versus the plot or the whatever, I wonder if that's a much more difficult way to read a book.
Well, there's an argument with that too, though, because when you said if it's different culture, it's a different culture, right? But you're going into it and say, hey, this culture is completely different than I'm used to. Why are they doing this? If you're asking the question, why are you doing this? Or why are they doing that? I don't understand why. It does not equate to what I'm used to or what I have here. Then, if you end up placing the judgment in the book because of X, Y, Z, the biggest problem I have is you read the book. Did you like the book? It's like, yeah, but I don't like. But let's use an example. You use the spanking. It's like, fine, but did you like the book? The question has to be coming back all the time. It's like, you made a conscious decision to read the book. Great. You made a conscious decision that one of the scenes that you disagreed upon. But the question I have to ask is, did you like the book? Right. If the question is yes, then Fine. So that little portion that you disagreed on, but why did you disagree on that? Because you're not used to seeing it? You're not used to reading it? Or you just think that this is immoral? Then what it is, right? So at the end of the day, it is what it is. Keep an open mind. Read the book, whatever you want to read, but just don't judge the book by its cover.
Thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share a review. We love to hear from you. Send us an email at yourbookmarksinfo@gmail.com. Join us again right here where you left off.